This episode was sponsored by our patrons: Bree Ames Smith, Eugene Lewis, Eric and Carolyn Shumway, Robin Brown, Skylar Collins, Julie Gray, Janelise Cannon, Jamie Lang, Maria Sanchez, Valerie Jacobson, Jill Harrigan, Heather McKinnon, Chantel Oliver, and Caitlin McTaggart. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month to help us make more episodes happen. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. We couldn't do it without you. Hi, Olivia.
Hi, Katie.
Here's my big question about life for today. Are we creating our lives, or are our lives creating us?
Well, I am currently wearing a bracelet that says we create ourselves as we go. But the kind of reason I love the way they phrase that is because I think it's both. Shocker. Okay. Olivia thinks it's both about anything. I think we create ourselves as we go means we are actively creating ourselves, and the stuff that is happening to us is creating us. And that's the beautiful thing and the terrible problem about life.
Well, I guess I've been wondering if every one of us, consciously or not, approach life through one of these two lenses. It's like, am I building and in control of my life, or are things happening to me and I'm reacting? I was just sitting in my hammock for a couple hours thinking about it. Well, what do I really think? Are things, like, looking back at my own life, do I think about my story as things happening to me and what I did with it or about it? Or is it like, I am building this, I am making these choices?
I think the easier your life is, when things generally are working out according to your plan, it's very easy to go, yeah, I'm doing it! Until the first big catastrophic obstacle arrived and they went, oh, wait.
That's interesting that you would think of it in terms of a plan, though. I was thinking of it in hindsight, like when you tell the story of your life, is it, here are the things that happened to me and how it shaped me? Or is it, here are the choices I made and what came from it? It's amazing. You could take the same set of events and tell it two very different ways.
Yep.
So,
which is why it's both.
Well, this is why it's been on my mind, because I've been researching the life of Mata Hari. Much has been written about her life, and her story has been told both ways. She ran away to Paris to live during one of France's most iconic times, La Belle Époque, the beautiful era of quintessential Paris. And then comes World War I. She becomes a spy, and she was executed for espionage by firing squad in 1917. Or did she? So much speculation has gone on about who she was, what she was doing, and why she was doing it. Her life is a giant puzzle, but more than all the talk about was she or wasn't she a spy, and we will get into that. Her life, for me, is a cinematic portrait of what it means to make your way alone through this messy human world. She said she wanted to live like a colorful butterfly in the sun. And I think she absolutely did that. Like a butterfly, she was almost not of this world, and she certainly was not long for this world.
Utterly free and easily crushed.
Oh! This is a story about how a story is told. And it is absolutely amazing from start to finish. I'm Katie Nelson.
And I'm Olivia Mickle.
And this is What's Her Name?
Fascinating women you've never heard of.
Have you heard of Mata Hari rum?
No.
No, you have not, because it just came out.
That's probably not why I haven't heard of it.
Do you remember Jin?
I was going to ask if it was one of theirs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yes, Josine Heinen's Dutch distillery, which highlights Dutch historical women, has just come out with Mata Hari rum.
Awesome.
So, let's go back to the shop in Leiden with Josine Heinen to hear the story of Mata Hari.
This is her artist name that she took on, but her real name is Gertrude Zelle, born in 1876 in Leeuwarden, the north of the Netherlands. She came from a pretty wealthy family, so her father had a hat factory. And so she got a very outstanding education for purposes of, taking your place in this elite society. So she had conversational German, conversational English, conversational French, that she was even later confused with native French speakers, right? And she was really well educated in that way. But then her father went bankrupt and he left the family. And shortly after, her mother died. So this was really a quick shift of position from upper class Dutch society to a poor orphan. So she had a legal guardian uncle who lived in Leiden. And he sent her to a new type of school here for kindergarten teachers. However, the head schoolmaster fell in love with her and then he hit on her. So her guardians took her off the school. And then she was out of an education and out of money and everything.
Of course. Of course, she gets kicked out of school. He doesn't get fired.
Exactly. That school was actually in Leiden.
Wow. I don't think I even realized she was Dutch.
No, and she would have preferred that, I think. She obscured the fact that she was Dutch.
Yeah, where did I think she was from?
Indonesia?
Yeah, I thought she was Asian, I think.
Yes. That's how she presented herself to the world.
On purpose,
yep.
Yeah.
As we shall see. So she has now lost her chance at education.
She was very beautiful, very charismatic, and very special, even at the age of 16. So for a girl in her position, like no money, no status, no parents, the only thing to do was marry. So she did, and she married what in Dutch is the saying, with a glove. So this military captain, Rudolf MacLeod, who was stationed in the West Indies, like the Dutch former colonies, he put an advertisement in a newspaper, like stating his military rank, looking for a wife. So you can send a letter and your picture, and I will get back to you. So she did. And I mean, this sounds crazy now, but at the time it was pretty common. So she sent the letter and her photos. They are, of course, now in the museum. Very pretty. And then he returned an envelope with a glove. And if you got the glove, then it meant you could go down there and then you would be awaited by your soon-to-be husband.
At first, this love match was passionate, very physical. And it's also a grand adventure because she goes off with him to the West Indies.
So she went to the West Indies by boat, took weeks.
But on the boat to Indonesia, Margarita was just incredibly sick the whole way over.
Aww.
And the historian Pat Shipman has very convincingly pieced together the evidence. Almost certainly, she was suffering from syphilis.
Aww.
Thanks, Rudolph.
Aww.
Great start to a great marriage.
And then her husband, Rudolf MacLeod, was really a brute and an alcoholic, and it was a terrible marriage.
Life in Indonesia is just a different world. The Dutch are occupying colonists of the harshest kind. Like, the culture among the Dutch colonists was extremely racist. They enforced the superiority of white people with this kind of like fervor, even amongst each other. But Margarita Zelle was given by Mother Nature olive skin and dark hair. And she's Dutch, but she has this dark complexion. And she was basically constantly being pecked at by the other Dutch colonists. And Rudolph, too, he was always being teased for marrying an Indonesian woman, which was like the most shameful thing you could do, even though all of them kept Indonesian mistresses.
Right.
And Rudolph was always like, you must be impeccably European. Don't embarrass me. But he also cut off all money, so she couldn't get the clothes and the trappings of what it means to be impeccably European. Mm-hmm. So she was dressing in Indonesian clothes because that's all she had, because he literally wouldn't give her any money. Neither of them are emotionally equipped to handle themselves. Margarita and Ruud. I just want to send them both to therapy. They take it out on each other. No one was blameless in this marriage. It became a lifestyle of physical and verbal abuse, lots of cheating, pushing each other's buttons all the time.
So it was really unhappy, and they got 2 children, a boy and a girl.
They were always short of cash, because Rudolf is always out drinking and gambling. And then about 3 years into this toxic life, their 2-year-old son died.
The boy died either of being poisoned by their house personnel because they were in a fight.
There were all these stories that went around that a jealous nanny who'd had an affair with Rudolf poisoned the child, all these stories like this. But again, Pat Shipman has fairly firmly argued that he died of congenital syphilis. Yeah.
Or because it was too high doses of medication against syphilis.
The thinking was that for babies born with congenital syphilis, if you give them slowly increasing doses of mercury you'll kill the syphilis.
Which it will.
It will.
Oh. And also their youngest daughter was born with this disease, and this is something that was carried for life.
Eventually, Rudolf retired on a pension, and they left Indonesia for the Netherlands, where they were, I think, sort of hoping to escape all the toxic aspects of their relationship. But, of course, when they got there, immediately, for one, debtors in the Netherlands pounced, and it turned out that Rudolf owed money all over the place.
Sure.
The abuse and the hatred, it just grew and grew, really awful stuff. And here's an amazing thought. I think she must have at some point had the thought, how do I get rid of this guy? And in fact, both of them, in their letters, they have this is the most well-documented relationship of all time. All the letters have been saved. And they have both expressed, if they just died, I would be so much better off. We know they're thinking this. But here's what's amazing. In Mata Hari's childhood in Leiden, the notorious case of Huyemi was all over the newspapers. So she knew arsenic was not the way.
Wow.
So I guess when Mata Hari was studying here in the kindergarten school, then she learned about Huyemi, who was now in prison and still alive. But then maybe thinking about this arsenic. But now it could be detected, right? So this method was...
She learned from Huyemi now to do that?
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that's an amazing...
link. Yeah. For me too, that she just walked the streets of Leiden. That was still so much in shock of what had happened with Huyemi poisons. So she got a divorce.
Finally, and this is many years that we're glossing over, but finally Margarita filed for divorce.
Uncommon in the time, but of course this was a case of, it was pretty clear.
And I have the verbiage of the suit here. It's quite the snapshot. I'll give you just some of the highlights. So it's just a bullet point list of all the things that he has done, cheating, of course. During their marriage, especially in the last years, she was beaten almost daily and spat at in the face. He would address himself to the servants while she was present, calling her that bitch of mine. That in the presence of his lawyer, he spoke with such an undignified way to her that the lawyer said he has never seen or heard a woman so insulted like this. At her house, he gave her a beating with a walking stick so that a maidservant had to come between them. That yesterday he told Mrs. Lubeck, who was there in the presence of her daughter, that bitch of mine has poisoned my child with unripe pears. Jeez. Adultery, insults, and excesses, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so you get the idea.
Yeah. When your only options are leave and starve to death and lose your child,
Yes. What is she going to do?
Yeah.
And she won. She won custody of their daughter. But since her suit was published, And, it's all the juicy gossip in all the newspapers. Rudolph was duly humiliated. He responded by accusing her, of course, of making it all up.
Yep.
And he actually placed an ad in the paper.
He put an advertisement in the local newspaper that, do not sell anything to Margaret MacLeod Zelle because she's an imposter and she will, cheat you of your money, etc., etc. So he actually scandalized her new life, right? So it was no money, no job, no possibilities. So because she couldn't provide an income, her daughter was sent to some kind of boarding school. And then so she was left now trying to make a life for herself. But women were not able to, by law, to buy property, to go to a shop. You would have to sign with your man's name. No money, no idea what to do.
She's going to have to start fresh where nobody knows her.
And then she sold her bike, to someone, and then purchased a train ticket to Paris.
She literally went off to join the circus. In Paris.
Wow.
Because she had heard, Paris is the land of possibilities.
She was going to be a trick rider, like riding horses. But the circus conductor was like, "You're not good at this." So I just want to pause and take stock because everything she has tried so far in life has been a catastrophic failure. School, when she was a kid, fail. Grand adventure in Indonesia, fail. Motherhood, fail. Fairy tale love match, fail with a syphilis bonus pack. And now, even running away to join the circus is a fail. She tries to get just honest work as a secretary, even cleaning houses. Fail. What does she have? Her refusal to be crushed. She has her body. She could try dancing. She has no training whatsoever. But what if she did something exotic?
Yeah.
What if she dared to do things nobody else dared to do? That's something that she has within her. Like, what if she dared to take her clothes off? And what if, this is a pretty amazing pivot, what if she used the color of her skin to her advantage?
Claim this is an exotic dance from a place you've never been, and that's why you've never seen anything like this before.
Exactly. She's an Indonesian temple dancer. It's not just an entertaining dance. These are sacred in the East. It's genius. She was an instant star.
Brilliant.
And this is actually where I had always heard that she's an exotic dancer who pretended to be Indonesian, and she took her clothes off with an Eastern flair, and people loved it. And that is all true. But I want to look in on this scene. I want to look at her debut dance. And I want to give more credit to the audience than is often given, because this is not just a lady taking her clothes off. This was, I think, a lady with a story to tell and a heart full of human experience and desperation to be heard. She put all that into her dance. Lucky for us, there was one Francis Kaiser, a journalist. He attended her very first performance, which was at a private event at a society hostess's house. And he was so blown away. He wrote this long article about it. I want to read it because it says so much that is so often glossed over. Vague rumors had reached me of a woman from the Far East, a native of Java, wife of an officer who had come to Europe to introduce some of the richness of Oriental color and life, of veils encircling and discarded, a burst of fresh, free life, of nature in all its strength, untrammeled by civilization. A door opened. A tall, dark figure glided in. Her arms were folded upon her breast beneath a mass of flowers. For a few seconds she stood motionless, her eyes fixed upon a statue of Shiva at the end of the room. Her olive skin blended with the curious jewels in the dead gold setting. A casque of worked gold upon her dark hair, an authentic Eastern headdress. A breastplate of similar workmanship beneath the arms. She was enshrouded in various veils of delicate hues symbolizing beauty, youth, love, chastity, voluptuousness, and passion. The first notes of a plaintive, weird melody were sounded, and with slow, undulating, tiger-like movements, she advanced toward the god. It was an appeal to the spirit of evil, an invocation to help her avenge a wrong. Her eyes shone with the fire of revenge when she began, but after a while, a softer light crept into them as she strove to win the favor of the deity. Then the movements became more and more intense, more feverish, more eager. She first threw flowers, and then divested herself one by one of the veils, implying that, as a sacrifice, she gave beauty, youth, love, etc., and finally worked to a state of frenzy, unclasped her belt, and fell in a swoon at Shiva's feet.
Wow. Genius. Genius.
I have always only read it's glorified stripping, but no, this is deep. She has created a dance where she is desperate at the feet of the god of evil and destruction. One by one, in that symbolic removal of the veil, she sacrificed beauty, then her youth,
chastity,
virtue after virtue in this mounting desperation.
Yes.
And then finally, symbolically, she gives her entire sexual being to the god of destruction in order to triumph.
This is a brilliant amalgam of art and anthropology and voyeurism and appeal to pity and wow. She's very smart.
She's got it. She took her whole story and she built it into this half myth. But I think it's the power of the performance, what must have been the emotional truth of it that was coming through. She really has spent her life sacrificing all those things to the god of destruction.
And the fire of revenge.
Yes!
Yeah.
In a desperate appeal to triumph.
Yeah.
So I think that must be what came through, and that was the cause of her stardom. Yeah. It's a genius blend of fraud and absolutely naked honesty and vulnerability.
Truth.
Mata Hari, an entirely new person, is born in triumph from the destruction.
Wow.
Oh.
Cool.
She thought of the name of Mata Hari. Mata Hari actually means Eye of the Dawn in Indonesian, because she heard this in Indonesia where she lived. She told in a different story in every interview she gave. She was really creating this myth around her. And then in one interview she was telling that she was actually born in Indonesia, but she didn't know her parents because they put her in the basket somewhere, and then she was found by monks who raised her and taught her the dances. She was also dancing naked on the stage sometimes, but it was really like a high culture event. So there were ambassadors, princes, generals, and she had relationships with all of them. She was Mata Hari now, and she had people paying for her stay in the most exclusive hotels, like this really voluptuous lifestyle. Even a Russian baron took her to the Netherlands for a couple of weeks to show her the Netherlands, thinking she was from France. And then later he found out that she was actually Gertrude Zelle from the Leeuwarden, right? And then he was like, oh, right, thank you for our nice time. I got fooled, but I am the fool, so thanks. And here's the bill for your mega hotel stay. Wow. This was a really interesting game, actually, she played with everyone, with her suitors, with people trying to tell the story of Mata Hari, but she made it so that it was something else every time. But she did make a fortune. She was extremely rich.
Wow.
She lived in Germany most of the time. She had most shows there. Also Milan, Paris, but she lived in Germany. She had a big stable with magnificent horses. One she named Vishnu.
She is living the absolute dream. Living in the finest hotels, not just visiting them. And of course, her fame comes with many imitators. Over the years, plenty of women start doing exotic dances from the Far East.
Yeah.
What I love is Mata Hari's reaction to all the imitators. It's so delightful, I have to read it to you. Ugh. This is her actual quote. "Born in Java, in the midst of tropical vegetation, I have been taught from my earliest childhood the deep meaning of these dances. Only those born and bred there become impregnated with their religious significance and can impart to them that solemn note to which they can lay claim." Only
bless
people.
their hearts, these Europeans trying to do it.
Oh,
Wow.
amazing. This is no femme fatale because there is not a string of heartbroken haters in her wake.
Yeah.
Later on, during her trial, they tracked down 53 former lovers of Mata Hari. Not a single one of them had anything negative to say about her at all.
Wow.
Everyone is somehow happy about all of this. Like, here's my favorite example. She has a lover who sets her up in this country chateau in France for 3 years. She rides every day and she has the finest of everything. And so much so that he starts to feel the squeeze. Like, he's this insanely wealthy guy and he's starting to go broke. Well, so his mother-in-law finds out about Mata Hari and she decides she's going to make the trip to the chateau herself to shut this nonsense down. And immediately upon meeting Mata Hari, she decides that she should stay for a few days and learn more. And before she knows it, she stayed for weeks and they're best friends forever. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, this woman is an absolutely masterful people pleaser.
Yeah.
Is she having the time of her life, though? Because by this point, Rudolph, her ex, has claimed custody of her daughter.
But she won.
She won, but
she couldn't
she's
feed her.
an exotic dancer.
Did she ever get her daughter back?
Tragically, not. And this, for me, it's heartbreaking when I read this. It is a letter that she wrote to a friend of hers when she just arrived in Paris. She wrote that, actually, I just want to make a life for myself and Nonny, or that was the name of her daughter nickname, as a decent mother. But I also need to earn an income. And apparently I can only do that by leading the magnificent life people are offering me here. But I already know that this type of life will end in disaster. But I think I have accepted this. So what she wanted was just to take care of her daughter, but there was no way of supplying the income. But there was this Mata Hari figure, but the Mata Hari could never have the custody of her daughter because she was an exotic dancer.
Then the First World War started.
So all her belongings in Germany were confiscated. And this, I don't know if it's true or not, but she shot her horses because she didn't want the Germans to have them. But her favorite horse, Vishnu, she killed with a dagger in his heart. Again, I can't, think if this is authentic. She did tell it herself, of course, but we never know if this is the truth or not. So she traveled to the Netherlands. She was pretty much bankrupt when she arrived because everything was confiscated by the German government. So she was not cautious. Actually, she was extremely uncautious.
She was extremely uncautious. And here's where her story gets so tangled. She sets herself up in The Hague, but it's, she says, just so boring. She just couldn't stand it. She thought, well, I can't go to Germany. Maybe I could go to Paris again. She's a Dutch citizen. The Netherlands is neutral, so she can go wherever she pleases.
Dutch people could travel, whereas other nations, like at war with each other, of course couldn't.
So she went. Immediately, the British are suspicious of her.
The British at first thought she might be a spy because there were a lot of spies in World War I traveling all over Europe. And she had affairs with high people in the army, with generals from Russia, France, Italy, Germany.
They think she's a German spy. They send word to the French. So the French intelligence puts a couple of guys on her in Paris, tailing her full time. They follow her for 6 months, recording her every move. Like, they steam open her mail, and all these records still exist. You can follow her around every moment of her life in Paris for 6 months like they did. Shopping every single day, lunching with this or that army officer, inviting men into her rooms.
And they know who she is, right? It's not like this is a weird Dutch lady who arrived. Like, they know it's Mata Hari.
She's the most famous woman in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she knew they were tailing her. And there are some fun stories of her, like, enjoying losing them in her carriage. And they're in hot pursuit. And then she suddenly goes riding by them in the other direction with a big smile.
Wow.
Okay, Olivia, so here's your options. What is going on? A, she had agreed to be a spy but changed her mind. B, she's about to be framed. Or C, she's a very good German spy. What do you think?
B with a side of misogyny and racism.
Oh. About to be framed because woman?
Yeah, just because she is inherently suspicious. I don't know. It seems like some British officers got weirdly obsessed with her and decided that the way to punish her for being irresistible and making them feel uncomfy was to prove that she's evil.
Yeah. We have these transcripts of interviews when they stop her. They grill her forever, and then they finally let her go. But in their report, this is the literal quote. She's a handsome, bold type of woman. We don't like this. We don't like this. She's traveling alone. She's wealthy. She's shameless.
Yep.
She therefore must be a spy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've read so many different takes on this part of her life. And it has literally just been for me weeks of puzzling and puzzling. Among her early biographers, she was the ultimate femme fatale, devastating German spy. And they always say she was responsible for the deaths of 50,000 men on the front. They always say that. That's just like a number picked out of thin air.
Yeah.
Modern writers almost universally land somewhere between A and B. Just like you know, it's like, oh, it's this cocktail of misogyny and fear, and she's being set up. Or maybe she did agree to be a spy, but then she didn't follow through. Or she's just really bad at it. And so she was framed.
I mean, I'm sure she would be very good at it because it's just another story. It's just another false identity in playing a role.
Yeah.
But I see no motivation for why she would want to do that.
She doesn't seem to have any patriotic ties to any nation whatsoever, except maybe Indonesia. I don't know. Her native land. There is one thing she is constantly needing, and that is money. And especially now when the war starts. Her dances are old news. Everybody who is anybody has already seen it. She needs money all the time, and she needs it so bad. So I guess if somebody were to come along and say, spy for us, and we will give you this massive amount of money, I think she's always been game for the highest bidder, you know?
Yeah, but then the highest, they could have just bought her off.
Yes.
Spy for us
exactly. Instead. So who gave her money?
Yeah.
Who is she really loyal to? You know, who really is Mata Hari inside? What would she genuinely do? Come 1916, so we're 2 years into World War I.
She met her great love. It was an army captain from Russia. Yes, Maslov. He was 15 years younger than her, I think. Like her one and only love.
Vladimir de Maslov, she calls him Vadim, a Russian officer. He's 21 years old. Their love letters are giddy, and we have them all. They're talking marriage. He's posted out to the front again.
And he was at the Battle of Verdun, and he got injured.
She says, I could go to this nearby spa town, Vittel, to be near the front. But you need a pass to go to Vittel. So she applies for one. Being a neutral Dutch citizen, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. There are tons of spa towns not on the front, but she wants to go to the one where she can be near Vadim. Or she wants to go to Vittel because she is suffering physically. She never says why. We do know she had syphilis. And she wants to take the waters. And that's what she puts in her application for a travel pass.
Plus, dancing is hard on your body, and she's almost 40. That's kind of the end date.
And she even said, she's like, I just finished the season. All I want is rest. That's what she says in the pass. And she doesn't get the pass, and she doesn't get the pass. So she goes straight to the guy who can give her the pass.
So she decided to ask the Ministry of War of France.
It's the head of French intelligence. Straight to the top. Why not? We have her word-for-word account of this conversation. And we have his word-for-word account of this conversation. And it's two totally different conversations. His name is Georges Ledoux. He smells trouble immediately. What they do agree on, both of their accounts agree, is that through some clever doublespeak, Ledoux has said he could give her the pass, and if Mata Hari were to bring back useful intelligence from this journey, that would be worth something. She gets the pass. She goes to meet Vadim. He's been wounded, but he's alive. There's joy and love and happiness. They get engaged. Also, what nobody knows except us in hindsight is that Mata Hari is basically bankrupt at this point. She's keeping the fact very well hidden, but she's truly desperate. So Mata Hari goes back to Ledoux with some gossip from the front. He's not impressed at all. So she ups her offer. And she says, I used to know the German crown prince. I could probably seduce him and get all kinds of information for my beloved France. And Ledoux is like, highly unlikely. But, he says, if you were to pull something like that off, the intelligence would be worth something in the range of 1 million francs. Has she just been hired as a French spy?
I would say she has been hired as a freelance spy.
Yes, she's going to do it. So to avoid the war zone, she has to take a boat around Spain and through the English Channel. The British stop her.
Why are the British so obsessed with her? She's not even...
I know, they're so obsessed. They grill her for a long time. They issue their final report. Again, it's so British. Here's the phrasing of their final report. Most unsatisfactory. That's what they say. And they don't let her through. They send her back to Spain. So she's stuck in Spain. She can't get to Germany. She's like, maybe I could do some spying from here. Like something that would be valuable enough, I could get some quick cash. So she looks around for some officers. The officers had always been her favorite lovers anyway. How about nothing less than the head of German intelligence in Spain? That might be useful.
There you go. Yeah.
So she has an affair with him. She learns a lot. She jots it down. She sends it off to Ledoux. No reply. Her bills and her creditors are mounting. So she gives the info to the highest ranking French guy in Spain with whom she also has an affair. And she gives the info to him. She's like, pass this on to Ledoux. This is good stuff. Nothing. Crickets. So eventually she's desperate enough. She returns to Paris herself. She goes straight to Ledoux's office, only to be told he's not in. She's like, who do I tell my secrets to so I can get paid? Instead, she got arrested.
So she got arrested in France. At first, of course, she didn't take it seriously. She wrote letters to all of her former lovers, this is not true. This is so ridiculous. Come here, write a letter, and let me out. But that didn't work.
She was locked up in Saint-Lazare prison, a woman's prison with notoriously horrifying conditions.
So then, of course, she hired a lawyer. They really went into detail, what information could I have given to the Germans, right? Because it was just nonsense.
For 6 months, she suffers there, slowly breaking down. Like, she has no clothes, there's no bathing. Like, her whole life she's had an obsession with being clean. I mean, she had just fallen all the way to rock bottom. They question her over and over. She can't sleep. She's crying all the time. She writes desperate letters to all these former lovers. Aww. I'm coughing up blood. You can't imagine the conditions. And all those former lovers, they write letters to the prison. They keep saying, like, please listen to her. Send a physician. Do something. And so the prison does. They send in a physician multiple times. And every time the physician examines her and issues a report, she's fine. No symptoms of anything except abject misery. Physically, she's fine. Through 6 months of interrogation by, I should say, the most famous of all interrogators, and together with Ledoux, the two of them together have outed over 500 spies over the course of the war.
Jeez. Or have they?
He prides himself on finding the smoking gun, the interrogator, though. Like, he's like, I will find absolute evidence. I will not settle for anything flimsy. And I think that's why it takes 6 months. Because he just keeps looking, and they're finding nothing. They cannot get her on any evidence at all. The closest they get is they find large sums of money entering her bank account. And she's like, yes, that's how it works. I spend time with men, and they give me large sums of money in my bank account. And all the while, for the whole 6 months, she just keeps saying, you will never find anything because I am not a German spy. I haven't done anything. And it seems like their interrogations are really all about her lifestyle, because we have transcripts of them. Actually, fascinatingly, some of them are still classified.
Wow.
Still sealed. Amazing.
Wow.
But the interrogations are all about her lifestyle. It's all about the number of lovers she had. It's about where her money is coming from. And it's about how blatantly unashamed she is.
Yep.
She's just completely open about it. She even says...
See? It's just misogyny.
Yeah. And they're like, you have slept with so many military officers. And she says, yeah, it's just my kink. I enjoyed sort of collecting officers. I liked to compare different nationalities. It was my thing. And they're just so disgusted.
Yeah.
Eventually, they allow someone to bring her toiletries in and some clean underwear. But they say this particular cream right here works as invisible ink. And she's like, yeah, I guess it could work as invisible ink. It also treats syphilis. So, and they were like, you disgusting harlot, we will find a way to end you.
Jeez.
And in the end, they did. French intelligence intercepted some German telegrams identifying Mata Hari as Agent H21. And they didn't say her name, but it was instructions to wire some money to The Hague under the care of the name of her maid. So it had to be her. Now, these telegrams were transmitted using an old code Germany had stopped using because they knew the French had broken the code. Randomly, here are these telegrams in the old code that the French can read.
And they know she's in prison.
They know.
And under suspicion.
They know, yeah.
Or the French are sending them.
Yes. So here's the thing. We do not have the original telegrams. They've never been found. So it's just Ledoux saying, well, we intercepted these telegrams. When she heard that, they told her in prison, they're like, we got you now. She racks her brain. And then she says, okay, I remember something. Right when war broke out, someone came to visit me in The Hague and asked me to spy for Germany. He gave me 20,000 francs, which I took. We had a lovely time, and he left. I dumped the invisible ink into the canal, and I carried on without a thought. Of course, I wasn't going to spy. I was accustomed to taking large sums of money from men without strings attached. And she goes on and on about how Germany, all the furs that they took, she's like obsessed with the furs that they took. And she's like, I took the 20,000 francs to make up for everything that Germany took from me. That's all I've done, I swear. So, those are the big pieces of the puzzle. I mean, there's more I have to leave out, but those are the big pieces of the puzzle. I just wrestled and wrestled because there are some weird choices here. Has she really suddenly fallen deeply and truly in love with a 21-year-old and chases him across France like she'd never chased a man in her life?
Yeah.
And the other one is, did she really think she could just take 20,000 francs from Germany and then just sort of like sideways shuffle out of the deal? Does she really think she could do that and then like forget about it?
Yeah.
So
also, she has syphilis, which eventually leads to madness, and she's been poisoning herself with mercury, which eventually leads to brain damage.
Yeah.
So she may not be making logical, well thought out decisions just in general.
Yes. She was a butterfly in the sun. She flits from one thing to the other.
Yeah.
And that description of her in prison, they're just so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like she's constantly weeping. She's absolutely lost her cool. The elegant Mata Hari's gone. And no matter what, the doctor says physically she's fine, but you can't help but just feel so heartbroken for her. But there's one big piece of a puzzle that's missing here, and it's missing in most of the biographies of Mata Hari out there. Someone thought to go searching the papers of the head of German intelligence during the war, Walter Nicolai. Did he leave any record of who was and wasn't a spy for Germany at the time?
That's
Yes.
where you find that.
Turns out he left a record. And it includes Mata Hari. He recruited and trained Mata Hari.
What?
In 1915, she traveled to Cologne and spent a week training in spycraft under the famed female spy master Fraulein Schragmüller.
Wow. Wow.
She did it.
Wow.
So, allow me to tell this story in a different way. She's been a spy since 1915.
What?
All her movements around Paris being tracked by those two French agents. They were always just like, she shops, she sleeps with men, foolish lady, pathetic. What if she was so good? That's exactly what she wanted them to think.
Wow.
I mean, remember how she did lose them sometimes.
Yeah.
She was reveling in the cat and mouse.
And shopping means encountering lots of other people.
Exactly. And then, come 1917, she needs to get to the front. What cover could she find? How about a young Russian officer? Find somebody who's so young, he's like desperate for a mother figure. You know, she can whip up a really quick, very passionate love affair.
Wow.
When she's stranded in Spain, unexpectedly, what does she do but target the head of German intelligence in Spain? It appears she's seducing him to try to get secrets out of him. But what if instead she's
giving him
reporting to him? And together they've decided what planted intelligence she should send back to Ledoux in France.
Right.
We actually now know he gave her 2,500 francs during that time.
The German officer did?
Yeah.
Wow.
Either the French say it was for sex, but more likely, she had delivered very useful intelligence, and he had paid her for it. I think she's a double agent. Well, I think she tried to be a double agent, and I think Ledoux, the head of French intelligence, was on to her. And he thought that if he kept her locked up in prison for months and months and months and like crushed the soul out of her, that she would confess. But she never did. She never did. So most people say, like, poor Mata Hari, oh, if she was a spy, she wasn't a very good one, just hapless victim, easy target for the French.
If she was a spy, she would definitely be very good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, her whole life is a front.
Yes, her whole life. And like, so this is the one fact that we know for sure. She trained as a spy in Germany. And even after 6 months of interrogation, when she appeared to have well and truly broken, she never gave that up. She went to her death before she ever gave that up.
Wow.
That's like mind-blowing.
Yeah.
The thing I hear most often today is that she never once communicated using spycraft. There's literally no evidence that can be linked to her. And I'm like,
Well, yeah, if you're a good spy, there wouldn't be.
Yes, exactly. There is literally no evidence she communicated using spycraft. She was really good. She was really good. So it makes me think, what if even all the weeping and the breaking down was an act?
Wow.
What if the physicians who visited her were like, she's actually fine. Physically, she's fine. She was fine.
Wow.
But somebody sent those telegrams. Or said they got those telegrams.
Right. Or, the French send them from the front where the Germans also are, and
using the old code. Yep. So it was either Germany gave her up. They knew she was in prison. They were like, we gotta wrap this up. So they gave her up, or
But why would they do that?
Some people think she was offered up as a distraction. And that's what Josine thinks. She thinks the Germans offered her up.
So the Germans started thinking of a way to actually get rid of her. So the Germans knew the French had their code of communication. So they made this message about how their spy, age 21, the dancer, was traveling to France. Knowing that the French will pick this up and then probably think about Mata Hari and arrest her. And if the Germans are lucky, the French will execute her so they don't have to do this themselves to cover the traces.
And that's a very popular sound take. I think it was Ledoux. I think it was the French planting these telegrams.
Yeah.
In either case.
It was a fake trial. And she was convicted of high treason. And it was stated that she was astonished and that she said in French, not even in Dutch, like her mother tongue. It's like, impossible, c'est impossible. She was so surprised.
In researching Mata Hari, I was on some kind of roller coaster ride. In turns, I took every possible stance. And I was convinced of this and I was convinced of this. I mean, I was just I was struggling to try to find the heart of the true Mata Hari. And during the time that I was in the poor Mata Hari hapless victim bad spy camp, I felt so uncomfortable because even though I felt sorry for her, I basically felt sorry for her in every single stage of her life. But I was not at ease, and I realized it was because of what we talked about at the start. That perspective removes all her agency. She was a string of things that happened to her from the beginning of her life all the way to the end. She's just this powerless victim, and the only thing she can do is react in inept ways. I wouldn't want to have my life interpreted that way. So then I thought, well, what if we do give her agency?
Yeah, even if we take that narrative, her reactions are not expected, right? The general reaction to, well, I need to somehow find a way to feed myself is, I'm going to pretend to be an Indonesian temple dancer and invent an entirely new art form and become wildly successful at it.
She does not do small things.
Yeah.
She does not.
That's a choice.
Yeah. And if we acknowledge that she was a resourceful, masterful manipulator who absolutely authored her own life.
Yeah.
She becomes an amazing person. That's who I see at the moment of her execution, anyway. Because she's weeping and broken, as they say. But then, once the execution order was there and she knew it was going to happen, suddenly, whoomp, Mata Hari is back. And she walked out to her execution there's photographs.
When the moment was there, there's a picture of her taken. It's pretty macabre, and she was standing firmly, confident, of course, still baffled. I think she was 41 at that time, but in her extremely nice coat, with hat, with her hair, she went to the end confident.
Wow.
Or confident, I don't think it's the right word, right? She went with her cachet, which is with her dignity. And she refused the blindfold, which was, of course, common in an execution.
She blows kisses to the guards standing there with rifles about to shoot her. There's a couple of nuns there who've been taking care of her who are weeping. She blows a kiss to them, and then she just stands with all her regal confidence and strength.
There were 13 executioners, of which 9 missed.
Wow.
this is like not like a normal number, right? I mean, so then it's... I don't know if they knew she was innocent or that it was just her reputation, but yeah.
The captain of the guards in that moment famously said, "By God, this lady knows how to die."
Yeah. Wow. Weirdly, my reaction is good for her.
I know. And like, what a life.
Yeah.
So in looking at the way that her story has been told for so long, on the one hand, most people, they want to side with Mata Hari, and so they read her version of events and they want to believe her. They do believe her, I wasn't a spy. I have, they believe she's completely broken down and they're totally on her side. Oh, poor Mata Hari, she was just, she was just hapless and ignorant. And I love that.
Which may be the best proof that she was really, really, really good at being a spy.
Really good.
That's what she's done her whole life, is get people on her side.
She can convince us still today. But she was really so much more.
In a way, she was so good at what she did. She was like the most famous celebrity of like the 1900s, like everywhere. She was a myth. She was magnificent.
She built her life.
Yeah.
How she wanted it to be.
With incredibly unexpected decisions.
Yes. She did live like a butterfly in the sun. She did.
Yeah.
Short, brief, beautiful, flitting from one thing to the other, but Mata Hari wasn't meant to grow old.
She knows how to win over an audience. She knows how to end a show.
Even in death. She exited the stage as spectacularly as she could.
The dramatic sacrifice at the feet of Shiva.
Yes! So interesting. Yeah. In addition to her knowing how to die, I am now convinced, by God, this lady knew how to live. Special thanks to Josine Heinen and her assistant Tess at True Tales Distillery Huyami Gin in Leiden. If you want to learn more about Mata Hari, we have book lists. Head to our website, What'sHerNamePodcast.com. Music for this episode was composed by Amulets, Jesse Gallagher, Doug Maxwell, Patrikios, Offenbach, ELPHNT, Ease Jammy Jams, Quincas Moreira, Gershwin, Wayne Jones, Jimena Contreras, BizBaz Studio, and an antique mechanical organ in The Hague. You can follow us on Instagram, X, and Facebook, where we post lots of additional content each week. And speaking of additional content, consider traveling with What's Her Name, What'sHerNamePodcast.com. Thank you so much for donating. Thanks for listening.